So we learned that at-talib is an example of a changeable ism because it can take a dhamma, a fatha, or a kasra. There's something called the unchangeable ism, and it's not going to change. It's always going to be written the same. So an example of that is hada. Hada, which means this. It's the masculine form of this. Hada. And there's like a dagger alif here. There's like a hidden alif. So it's pronounced hada. Hada, it's not going to take dhamma, fatha, kasra according to its position in a sentence. It's always going to be written like this. It's always going to be written like this. Basically, I'm going to redo the same chart with the same examples, except we're going to use hada. And instead of saying that it's in a state of marfu or a state of mansub or a state of majrur, we say that it is in the place of. Okay, so we have in the place of marfu. And an example of that would be kharaja hada. Kharaja, we said it means exited. Hada means this. So if somebody said this exited, then this is just an example of hada being in a place of marfu. Because if it was, for example, a talib, it would take a dhamma. And therefore it would be, a talib would be in a state of marfu. Okay, but hada is unchangeable. So we would say that it is in the place of marfu. We'll move to the next one. What was the next state that we learned? Mansub. And we said, Daraba al-waladu hada. The boy hit this. The boy hit this. As you can see, hada, it's written the same. It's not changing. When we had a talib on the board, a talib was changing. It was taking a dhamma, it was taking a fatha. That's because a talib is an example of a changeable ism, whereas hada is an example of an unchangeable ism. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. It's always going to look the same. This is important to know because, you might see hada and other unchangeable isms in a sentence, and you're like, well, why didn't it take a dhamma? Why didn't it take a kasra? Because it doesn't change. Certain isms in Arabic, they don't change. And hada is from those. Okay, and the third state was what? It was majroor. The example we used was what? Dhahabtu ila hada. I went to this. I went to this. So we see hada, it's always written the same. A talib, how is a talib? Let me just to really make things clear for you, okay? If a talib, if it was kharaja a talib, we would put a dhamma. Kharaja a talibu. Okay, if it was the boy hit the student, we would say a taliba. If I went to the student, it would be a talibi. You see how a talib changes? A talib changes because it's a changeable ism. Hada doesn't change because it's an unchangeable ism. Clear? All right, so the best way to distinguish between the two is, it depends on how you build your vocabulary. So for example, in this workbook, this is ideal because I give you vocabulary to work with. So I teach you examples of the unchangeable ism. And then before this, I give you lots of examples of the changeable ism. The way that this class is designed, or this book is designed, is that, the only prerequisite for this is that you know how to read. That's it. So I am assuming that the student only knows how to read, so I'm taking it step by step. Every little detail I am explaining as if you have no previous knowledge other than knowing how to read. And it's called vocabulary and grammar because along with every single lesson, I'm teaching you vocabulary to go along with the grammar. So just to reemphasize, in the previous lesson, we talked about the changeable ism. We used a talib as an example. For example, kharaja at-talibu, it will take the dhamma because that's the default state and it will be said to be in a state of marfu'. We have daraba al-waladu at-taliba, which would be in a state of mansub, and it is in a state of mansub taking a fatha because it's the object of a transitive fi'l. Then we have dhahabtu ila at-talibi, where it would take a kasra in a state of majroor because it's coming after a harf jar. So that was the previous lesson. Then in this lesson, we're learning that although there are changeable isms like a talib, there are also unchangeable isms like hada. There are unchangeable isms like hada. Okay, so you see, whereas a talib, it takes dhamma, fatha, kasra, Hada is written the same way. Hada is written the same way. So rather than saying that hada is in a state of marfu', you would say it is in the place of marfu', in the place of mansub, in the place of majrur.